Hello there, it's Skwatter with another shit-ass review of the games he just played. Today, or I should say tonight, because it's 11:43 p.m. at this point. Wait, 11:45? Shit. There's a conflict in time zones. Ah! But no, so yeah, I'm going to talk about the last two games that I played. Ys Book 1 and 2 and Ys Book 3, Wanderers from Ys. I'm not sure if it's called Book 3. I think it's just Ys 3, Wanderers from Ys. Even though in that case it would be Ys Book 1 and 2, and then it would be Ys 2, Wanderers from Ys. Because there was really no second Ys. It was just the first Ys pretty much divided in half. I mean, it's a sort of a First Blood Rambo thing going on there. But no, uh, so these two games, or I guess three games, as in certain regions they were released as two separate games, Ys Book 1 and 2. Um, Ancient Ys vanished, and then Book 2, whatever it could be. So these three games, or I guess I'll start off with Ys Book 1 and 2. Ys Book 1 and 2, I actually played on my home console. The TurboGrafx CD, and that is the TurboGrafx 16 system with the docking station and the CD-ROM drive with the 2.0 system card. And I played through the entire game on the actual system itself. So it's pretty much authentic. I mean, the game itself was burned. It was a burned copy. I used to have it way back in the day. I used to have a lot of great games for the TurboGrafx CD, but I sold them for well below market value, which I'm kicking myself now for. But again, I got them now as burned copies, and they seem to work fine, as you can see in the videos, because that's what was directly recorded by the VHS tape and then played back. But no, so yeah, I was trying to get my money's worth out of the system, so. Uh, because I had spent so much money on it comparatively. It's a rare system with rare parts and everything. Uh, so I was just trying to get my money's worth. And I feel at this point that I have, and this is what I'm going to get to later on in this little ramble here. So my thoughts on Ys Book 1 and 2. Tell you the truth. Now, there were a few different releases of this game, especially in the United States. There was one that was originally released for the TurboGrafx CD when it first came out, and then there was one released for the Turbo Duo, and I think the games are essentially the same. It was just a difference in CD printing art, because some of the discs that you see going off on eBay have TurboGrafx CD written on the disc, and others have Turbo Duo stylized written on the disc. And I'm not sure which image that my burned disc was from originally, but uh, I just think it was interesting how they would offer such an old game comparatively with a new system, because and then putting the label Turbo Duo on the disc when it's not really a Turbo Duo game. It's not a Super CD-ROM game, so you wouldn't need a Turbo Duo to play it, or a US Super CD-ROM card for that matter, which I also have. Hey, I'm sure I've mentioned that before. But no, so uh, follows the exploits of Adol Christian, or Adol, or I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, the way Japanese people would pronounce it. But no, so it follows Adol Christensen, or Christensen, I don't know. I never really paid attention to details like that, but so he's this little red-headed dude that kind of runs around in dungeons killing a whole bunch of things. Uh, to me, the graphics were very average, honestly. I mean, it was an older game. It was a port, so they had to work with what they already had already. I'm not sure if they completely rewrote the game's code or engine or programming for the TurboGrafx CD. I have played it on different consoles, such as the Sega Master System and the original Nintendo. And the graphics, I would say, they're a little more colorful, definitely, but In terms of resolution, not so good. Uh, the I would say the Genesis had higher resolution than the TurboGrafx 16 CD-ROM system. If you don't believe me, just try comparing shots from the Japanese release of Dragon Slayer: The Legend of Heroes on the Sega Mega Drive Genesis in Japanese, and well, the USA release or the Japanese release of the same game on the TurboGrafx CD, and then come back to me, because I would say the Genesis has, while it has a lower color palette, I would say that the detail, and I would say that the character sprites are worlds better animated. But no, I'm getting off topic here. So, Ys Book 1 and 2. It's got good music, definitely. Both CD-ROM recorded as well as PCM. I don't really have any problems there. I especially like, what is it, like the Shadow of Death Tower or something. It's the song that's used in the dungeon where you beat Darm in the final part of Book 1. Um, the one where if you listen to it, you'll know it when it comes. It kind of sounds like you're choking a fucking dog to death at one point. No, I certainly like the music. There's nothing really wrong with it in my eyes. The electronic kind of poppy rock rhythm that it has for the most part of all the tracks is enjoyable. I don't really have any issues with it. I'm not really expecting, like, a medieval kind of orchestra at all. So uh, other than that, yeah. So the graphics are kind of average, I would say. They're not CD-ROM graphics. The cutscenes, they're well done, I would say. They get the point across, and I certainly like the cutscene that happens at the end of Ys Book 1. When Adol is kind of rocketed up to the land of Ys, which is floating up in the sky. It's all uh, kind of montagey, and they've got a big, kind of electronic orchestra playing in the background. I thought that it was pretty well done, and to be honest, I think that the end of the game was kind of sudden and abrupt. I think that there should have been a monologue, like a sort of self-fulfilling, gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching soliloquy coming from the main bad guy. I'm not sure if it was Darm or Dark Fact at the very end. That is the end of Book 2. But I don't know. The game seemed to end pretty suddenly, and I think, like, you talk to all your friends at the end of it, all the people that you've met throughout your journey. And now this is one thing that I want to talk about here. I've looked up a bunch of stuff about the Ys video game series, and it always centers around Adol Christian. As far as I know, I've only played the first 4 games pretty much, that being Book 1 and 2, 3, and then 4, which I'm going to play through next later on. So they say that Adol has a friend that has been with him through thick and thin throughout the entire series named Dogi. And I gotta tell you, when I was playing through the game, I was expecting to see him, because I had played through both of those games, Books 1 and 2 as well as 3, before. And I remember Dogi from 3, definitely, but I don't ever remember hearing about him in Books 1 and 2. And the thing was, like, everybody was saying, oh, he's the wall crusher, he breaks through walls and everything, and he's the guy who frees Adol when he's imprisoned in Darm Tower. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't remember that. I don't remember Dogi being in the game at all. I remember Goban the thief, the mustachioed guy in the green tunic. I remember him, definitely. But I don't remember Dogi. In fact, I was looking for him. I was expecting him, but he never came around. So I went back through my own recorded footage and looked at it, and he's a guy named Colin. His name is Colin. He identifies himself as Colin. So I looked that up, and a few sites, there are only a few sites that say this. They say, oh, well, he's named Colin in the U.S. release of the TurboGrafx CD version. And I thought, well, in that case, he's not Dogi, he's Colin. If they wanted him to be Dogi, they could have called him Dogi, but he isn't. His name is Colin, right? So essentially, according to what I have played through, Dogi has not been in this story until Ys 3. So when I started playing Ys 3 and hearing about how Adol and Dogi, his old adventuring friend of long times past, I thought, okay, that's really sudden. I mean, kind of sounds like they just pulled that out of their ass. And I mean, again, I haven't played the original Japanese version. Of course, because it's in Japanese, I can't understand it. Uh, but again, like I would say, before, the internet with all this information, if you mentioned the name Dogi to any fan of the series who hadn't played Ys 3, and this is going back to the early 90s, if you did that, they wouldn't know who you were talking about, so they'd have no investment in the character at all. And even then, even if you say, fine, his name is Colin, they fucked up or whatever, he still didn't do a whole lot for you. In fact, when I first started researching this, they said, oh, Dogi is this guy who crashes through walls, and I thought, wasn't that Luta Gemma? And Luta Gemma was the guy who was in the cell with you, right? But of course, Colin, or fine Dogi if you want to call him that, he's the one who breaks you out of prison. But again, it seems that minor characters from the first game who are never again mentioned in any other iteration seem to have a greater role in the game than the guy who seemed to become second star throughout the entire series, right? So, I don't know. I just found that really, really weird. Um, so, for Ys Book 1 and 2, it's sort of top-down, kind of isometric. Well, not really isometric, just kind of bird's-eye view, because isometric is sort of a pseudo 3D effect, sort of like Diablo or Landstalker. But I would say that the game itself works better that way than a 2D scroller, as was the third game. And I guess you can call me entirely right, because the third game in the series is the only iteration that has it as a 2D side scroller. I don't know. It really lowered. The gameplay certainly wasn't as long. It wasn't as involving, and it was certainly more about platforming than anything else, which I did not appreciate. Um, I would say that the difficulty level of Ys Book 1 and 2 is uh, it's about right. It's just right, I would say. I would agree with the GameFAQs representation. It's just right. Uh, and then again, I did obviously, as you can see from my video footage, use the in-game cheat, the password function, to give me maxed out stats and everything. And I did that on purpose, just so it would be less likely for me to get so frustrated while playing the game and then stopping halfway in, right? Which unfortunately happened maybe like 85% through Ys 3 Wanderers from Ys. Like when I got to Merlin or whatever they call him, Murdarin, or I don't know, different iterations of the game or different translations name him differently. And that was the third game there. I sat there and I thought, you know what? I have a couple of videos of myself constantly reloading states, reloading the game and everything. I'm trying to conserve every bit of health that I can, but I just keep on losing it, especially with those knight statues that are stabbing you, or those guys that take away half your health just by running into you and everything. Oh god, it was terrible. And once I got to that boss battle with Merlin, I said, you know, this is enough for me. The game has become too difficult for me to enjoyably beat it. And when that time comes, I say, you know what, it's time for me to cheat, right? Even more than what I was at that point, because I still use the same sort of cheat function from the password system to give myself maxed out stats. Um, so I said, you know what, these two game discs, Ys Book 1 and 2 and 3, uh, I found, I actually think that this is very, very useful. While the password system is very cumbersome, it's several dozen characters long, and my God, you have to be very, very careful about what you type in there because you could fuck shit up. Uh, but no, what I did was I saved just before the battle with Merlin, and I screenshotted the TV that I was playing on with my cell phone, and I just entered the password into my Magic Engine emulator on my PC, and I just started playing from there with hex editors, locking my health and magic values at 100% or 255, the highest 8-bit hex address there. So once that happened, the game was pretty much a breeze, and I liked it that way, right? So I would say kudos to the developers because they ended up allowing me to basically transfer the game right over just like that and continue to play it instead of having to completely beat it all over again on a separate system. So that's something that I really like. That was very useful, so I took advantage of that. Uh, and I thought that I might have to do it with Ys Book 1 and 2, but I was actually able to beat it entirely on the system, which I'm very proud of. But yeah, no, so um, the voice acting. The voice acting, you know what? I'm very sorry, I kind of hit the microphone there. Uh, I'm very forgiving when it comes to voice acting. I'm just happy to hear it when it's there because to me, for a game like this that's as old as it is, I think it kind of breaks up the monotony of just running around killing the same guys over and over again. These blocky, pixelated 8-bit graphics bugging your eyes out and everything. Uh, Constant walls of text and everything going beedly 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 as they display on the screen and everything. I can't stand that shit. So having recorded dialogue, whether it's professional or completely amateurish, to me is still it's still enjoyable. It's refreshing, honestly, and I would say that about both games as well. Um, that being Book 1 and 2 as well as 3. Now, a lot of people say that the voice acting in Book 3 is uh, ludicrous. It's completely abysmal, right? But I wouldn't say so, honestly. I think that it serves its purpose. You know, and again, like you've got to remember where this company's coming from, right? Because I mean, it's like this wasn't Sega, this wasn't Nintendo. This company did not have that much experience, especially in North America, with these sorts of games, right? And I mean, again, the TurboGrafx CD at that time was pretty much the only CD-ROM console, video game console on the market, right? Some people say, oh, well, the FM Towns Marty beat it or something, and I don't think that's true, honestly. I think that might have been the first, like, combined CD-ROM system, so it might have beaten the Duo, but no, it's like that was before the Sega CD and everything, and before the CDI. So you have to put yourself into the perspective of what was going on at the time, right? You have to do it contemporarily. And the thing is, for the North American branch of the company, they didn't have a whole lot of time, money, and resources, right? They were a very small company. They were always the third wheel on the video game tricycle, and they weren't entirely sure if they should spend the time investing this much money into voiced dialogue, right? So they even for games like Dragon Slayer: The Legend of Heroes, people say that that game's voice acting is bad. You know, I'm able to recognize bad voice acting when I hear it, but again, I still appreciate it, right? And I understand why it is that way because again, these are small companies who don't have a lot of money to spend on this sort of thing, so they probably get local talent or maybe even just their friends or something to read the lines off. Uh, and again, I have to say that at that point in the early 90s, late 80s, companies like this did not know if it was worth investing money into this sort of thing because they didn't know if gamers would be receptive to voice dialogue, right? So, and I think that's why in Dragon Slayer: Legend of Heroes they actually give you an option to turn off the voice dialogue because they just simply weren't sure whether or not people would appreciate it. So I totally understand where they're coming from, honestly, and people say that the Japanese voice acting is better. Well, you know what? I don't understand Japanese as not a whole lot of other people do in the Western world, even though compared to where I am in Canada, Japan is more west than we are. But, because I gotta tell you, they say, ooh, the Eastern Sea is so blue, thanks, Alphaville. I gotta tell you, I'm in Canada, Alberta. Nobody's gonna fucking fly east to get to Japan from there. Fucking retarded, buddy. But no, so, yeah, I don't give these games flack for having amateurish voice acting. Uh, you know what? If it was from a AAA franchise, I would certainly be more than willing to dish it out. But when you've got such a small company that, because of the time and because of the technology, they just were not sure if it would be welcomed um, by their audience, right? So I totally understand what they mean by that. So that's no problem for me. The story, I would say, is very loose in both games. I would say I was playing from a walkthrough the entire time for both games. Sometimes I was even playing from a video walkthrough made from other people, which is you can kind of see that when I do it because I kind of just inch my character across the screen in several occasions. And I did that especially in the dungeons that were really, really dark and you couldn't see around you, or especially in the incredibly large and complex Dharm Tower where like I just couldn't find my way, right? So, and the problem was is that the video that I was watching, it's from World of Long Plays from Ys Book 1 and 2. The guy would he would chop out large portions of footage pretty much just for level grinding, right? Which I'm totally fine with, honestly. But the thing was, he'd chop out so much footage that he'd end up, the second the video comes back again, he'd end up in a completely different place, and you are not where he is, right? And it's not like you go through the door and there you are. No, you have to find your way there, right? So I didn't appreciate that. I had to follow different written walkthroughs to get to the proper places and everything, so that's why I did that sort of thing. Uh, yeah, and again, for the third one, it's definitely stripped down. There's only one town to go to. There are very few locations to go to. It's like East Light, if you ask me. Um, Pretty much, if you type in the code to get yourself max gold and max stats, you can pretty much max out your equipment other than what you find in dungeons pretty much at the beginning of the game, which I noticeably did when I was watching the video walkthrough, getting through this sort of thing. And I would say that the difficulty level of Ys 3, Wanderers from Ys, is way the fuck higher than Ys Book 1 and 2. Like, it is way the fuck higher, because again, I can prove it. I couldn't beat it, so I had to transfer it over to my Magic Engine emulator and use actual hex editor cheats to be able to beat it, which, I'm not ashamed of, right? Honestly, the thing is, my dad used to play a whole lot of video games, and he just wasn't very good at it. He didn't have the eye-hand coordination. He didn't have the aptitude for it. Um, whenever he died, he'd get mad and swear and yell and everything. He's a good guy. He wasn't a violent person. It's just something that I fondly remember from my childhood, watching from around the corner in the basement as he was playing Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo, and he died, and he's like, fuck, fuck, and you slap his leg really hard, you know. But and a while later, several years later, maybe mid 2000s, he just said, I got sick of playing games because I couldn't beat them. They were too hard for me, and I would get frustrated when I lose, so I just decided not to play them. I said, that's all well and good for you, but for me, I want to be able to beat them. And I don't believe that using cheats ruins a game necessarily. I think I've talked about this before in my review of, my rambling of the Knights of the Old Republic series, Star Wars, which I can honestly say I have played through. Well, I've tried to play it so many times, dozens of times, and I got sick of it because I would always cheat so much, and I'd give myself all this great equipment. So, I mean, it's like everything that you get normally in the game, you just don't really appreciate, right? And the game would get boring and everything. So I just kind of drop what I was doing and delete the save and everything. But no, at that point I said, you know what? I'm gonna start recording this. It was pretty much the games that made me started doing this, because I said I need something to motivate me to finish these games, and this recording of the gameplay footage gives me a goal to achieve. Right? It motivates me to finish these games no matter what. Right? So while I did cheat a little bit in the second game, giving myself a kill blaster and everything like that, I still played through the entire game and didn't get sick of it because I had a reason to, being these videos. But so yeah, in the case of the game being too hard, Ys Book 3, I would say, you know what, I'm not ashamed of myself, and I'm not upset of myself for cheating on it. Honestly, I'm not upset of myself for cheating on the first one. I play the game the way I want to, and if the game frustrates me, I don't let it I don't let it beat me down. I don't rage quit the game. I say, I'm going to beat this, right? And if I can't beat it the regular way, the honest way, then I'm going to beat it the dishonest way. Because you know what? That's what I did, and I did. I beat it, and I'm all the more happy for it because I saw the end, right? Because again, every game I play is for the storyline. I'm sure I've said that before. I don't play it for the actual gameplay. I do not. Running around in the same monotonous dungeon is boring as shit. Level grinding is boring as shit, right? So I play it for the story, right? So anything that can advance me further along faster in the story, believe me, I will take advantage of. So um, one thing I wanted to say about the cutscenes in the third game, Ys 3 Wanderers from Ys, is the opening cutscene where they talk about Demonicus, and I gotta tell you, I'm pretty sure that cutscene is in the Japanese version, the original Japanese version, but looking at it, it just does not look like a Japanese cutscene, because they're describing this character Adol, who you are, who fought Demonicus and everything, and I don't know if they're talking about this in like a sort of future past tense kind of thing, as you know, they're kind of partially recounting events that happened millennia ago, and then saying, oh, this is also, you know, kind of further in time, further past the events that you're about to play through in this game through Adol. But I mean, the character that they were showing you, this big, tall, buff dude with fucking long blonde hair and everything, with his little Viking helmet on and stuff, and his sword and everything. And I mean, it just didn't look like a traditionally animated Japanese anime cutscene. I mean, to be honest, I thought it was something that the Americans added in their port. Um, but no, it seemed to be the same in the Japanese version. And again, they were probably talking about a different person, honestly. So I wasn't entirely sure at that. It just kind of, you know, made me say, huh? What's this, right? It just seemed out of place. And, but yeah, no. Few things that pissed me off about the games, especially the dungeons where you couldn't see, or uh, the end of the third game where you were in the final dungeon and you could only see from like a stitch light that was constantly dragging itself across the screen. And you know, there were blind pits and blind corners and everything, and enemies that you couldn't see and shit like that. That was pretty lame. But to be honest, again, I like Japanese style RPGs. I like the older style of drawing that's in these games. It's not all like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon kind of drawings. Like, I mean, the characters actually look different from each other for the most part, and they have like their own different facial structures. You know, they don't all have sharp-ass chins and triangular shaped eyes and everything like that. So that's one thing that I like. So in the end, I would say books 1 and 2, and then 3. Good games and everything. I don't regret playing them. Could have been better, as I said. Could have been worse, as I said. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I wanted to say, honestly. Uh, yeah, so later on I'm going to be playing the fourth game, Ys 4, The Dawn of Ys. I know there's also Mask of the Sun on the Super Nintendo, which is also independently translated, but again, I'm on the TurboGrafx kick, so I will be playing the Dawn of Ys version. So if anybody sees this video, thanks very much for watching. It was a good time. It's late in the it's late at night / early in the morning where I am, so I'm gonna finish up and call her a night. So thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Alrighty, Skwatter out. Stop.